Hey, what is up everyone, it's David here. A lot of you have requested a video on how I screen for high quality stock ideas to go into my watch list. So in this video, I want to break down my process a little bit just so that you can see the ins and outs of how I filter out ideas to go onto my watch list. And as usual, towards the end of this video, I will also do a quick portfolio update. This video is not financial advice or recommendation to do anything. It's just general information for entertainment purposes. Now, before I talk about my system, I think it's really good for me to define the kind of investor that I am. Now, I like to keep things very simple. So no complex hedging strategies, etc. So I will only go with long positions and not short positions. On top of that, my preference is to invest in long-term structural trends because I think it's a lot more forgiving even if I'm wrong. And also, I've recently learned how to understand macro conditions so that I can manage my own emotions and my risks appropriately. And at the core, I am a fundamental investor. So fundamental analysis kind of helps me make my final decision. Now that I've defined the kind of investor that I am, I want to give you a high level overview in terms of the different components of my system. And then I'll dig into each of the components and their role within my system. There are three main components to my system. You have people, reading materials, and tools. Now, people are generally a list of people that I like to follow with a balanced view on either a company or a technology trend. I really want to emphasize balance here because it's really easy to build an echo chamber that kind of fuels your confirmation bias. So whatever company that I am interested in, I generally like to have a bullish view and then bearish view just so that I balance out my emotions a bit. And then when it comes to reading materials, I'm looking for high quality journalism that kind of helps cut down my learning curve. Not to mention keeps me posted on everything that's happening around the world. And then when it comes to tools, there are screeners that will help you find individual companies. But frankly speaking, this is where I spend the least amount of time. Majority of the time, I spend it on people and also reading materials. But I'll still talk about tools anyway. So when it comes to people, there are three main groups of people that I follow. One is macro. These are the people that I follow for macroeconomic news. So that could be central banks printing more money, more stimulus, changing inflation expectation, and how that impacts the stock market or even the crypto market, right? So these three are by far the ones that I found to be incredibly helpful. I'll show you how I build a very specific feed of just their news in just a second. Beth is who I follow on Twitter to understand technology companies. 10th Man is very detailed analysis on different companies in the US and Canada, helps me cut down my learning curve substantially. And The Popular Investor is a YouTube channel that I follow because I think his style of investing is what I aspire to have in the future. It's a very good balance between technical analysis, fundamental analysis, and also taking into account macro conditions. This list is not comprehensive, but it is some of the top people that I follow on a day-to-day basis. And then there's definitely some funds that I follow quite closely as well. So let me show you what I mean by that. Now for me, I use Twitter to build my network of information. A lot of the people I just mentioned right here are very active on Twitter. So I basically use the list function in Twitter and I build a list of these people that I think are really worthwhile keeping up to date. And every day I just come here to see if there's any news pieces I need to pay attention to, so on and so forth. And it's a balanced view between both bullish and bearish view so that you're never quite in a echo chamber. So I come here every single day to see if there's anything that I need to pay attention to, anything I need to keep up to date. And sometimes they give me great ideas as well. To keep me posted on what different funds are doing in terms of what they're buying and selling, I use Whale Wisdom for that. The website is free to use, so I'll leave a link in the description box below. But what I really want to say here is that there are a lot of different funds out there, so we have to find funds that are most closely aligned with our own values and the type of investor that you are. But let me share a few funds that I personally follow. Bailey Gifford is definitely one of them, but they're more of a growth-oriented fund. So I generally like to come here every so often, see all holdings, and see what they've bought and sell. So you can see that, they've sold some of their Tesla shares, they sold some Amazon shares, but they bought more Shopify, Alibaba, and so on and so forth. So I use this to generate a lot of different ideas in terms of how they're managing their portfolio. And then I have Berkshire on my list as well. Berkshire is ran by Warren Buffett, as many of you already know. I come here mostly for value ideas. I want to see if there's anything I potentially missed and want to see what they bought as well. right? So we all know that they recently bought Verizon and also Chevron, so I'm not going to go through it. Soros is another fund that I follow. It used to be a hedge fund ran by George Soros, but now it's more like a family office structure. And their style have kind of transitioned into growth at a reasonable price as well. So it's not really an ARK innovation type strategy where you purely invest in innovation, but in my opinion, they're more focused towards growth at a reasonable price, as in valuation still matters. So again, I come here for growth at a reasonable price type ideas. Duquesne is another fund that I follow quite closely as well. Now, Duquesne is ran by Stan Druckenmiller, and Druckenmiller is not exactly a value investor, nor is he a growth investor. So he's kind of right in the between, and I like to come here exactly for that. I want to see if there's any value stocks that I miss or any growth stocks that I missed as well. Now, when it comes to Australian stuff, there are no websites that keep tabs on how everyone's position is changing. So one of the ways that I do this is I'm personally invested in Argo. I usually look at their investment updates and see what my top 20 holdings have changed. Now, if you follow them closely, you can actually see, how the holdings have changed. I do the same thing for Wilson Asset Management as well. I see, what are some of the top 20 holdings change from month to month, and that gives me ideas on whether there is individual opportunities to go into my watch list or not. So everything I just talked about, from using Twitter to build your list of people that you follow, not to mention using Well Wisdom to track what are the different funds buying and selling, all of that builds an information edge that helps you connect the dots. But the most important thing I want to say about this component is that you have to pick people that are most suitable to your risk appetite, your time horizon, and your style of investing. If you're more into trading the market, those group of people that I just mentioned are probably not a good fit. So you have to decide what kind of funds you want to follow, what kind of people you want to follow, and build your own information network from there. So I want to come back to this slide for just a second. We just talked about the people component. I want to talk about the reading materials component next. One of my first source of information is actually Seeking Alpha. I use this mostly for my US watch list. And when you have a list of ideas that you're interested in, some of it is already in my portfolio, but some of it's no longer in my portfolio, or I'm waiting for a better position. The good thing about Seeking Alpha is that once you add everything into a portfolio, it tracks some of the latest analysis, articles, news. So I spend a lot of time here for both news and also transcripts. These transcripts are really helpful to understand what are some of the concerns coming from analysts at the moment. I think that helps me build a more balanced view of a company instead of being overly optimistic. Another source of information for me to kind of get ideas for stocks is on Bloomberg. Now, the way I use Bloomberg is more for news. And what I've found is that if you come here on a day-to-day basis and you read it regularly, you start to spot trends in terms of what's happening around the world. And I know that, they're talking about George Soros at the moment, but, over the last couple of weeks, there was a lot of reports on the pipelines being breached, different other companies having cybersecurity breaches as well. So as you keep yourself posted on what's happening around the world, you start to realize there's different trends that's popping up, and not a lot of people might be talking about them. So I use Bloomberg as a really good, high quality source of journalism on the markets. The only reason why I'm not using AFR is because it has both US and Australian news over here. And sometimes the AFR kind of reposts some of the articles from Bloomberg anyway. So I like to go straight to the source. And another source of reading that I think is really worth your attention and time is reading the writings from Charles Goodhart. Now, The Popular Investor got me onto this, and I think it's such a balanced, non-hyped view about macroeconomics, about interest rates, inflation, etc. And he's really spot on. So I come here more for macroeconomic opinions from Charles. It's just a great read. I think it's really worth everyone's time. The last component of my system to generate high quality ideas is actually in tools. And frankly speaking, this is by far where I spent the least amount of time, but let's go through it anyway. One of the first places that I like to go to, which is a bit odd, is I like to come to Shortman. And Shortman is basically a place where you find some of the most short stocks on ASX. And I personally think that when everyone agrees with you on a particular idea or thesis, you probably already missed the boat. It's when you have conflicting ideas and people cannot agree on the same thing yet. that's maybe where you have a truly great idea that should go into your watch list. Now, I actually talk about how I do due diligence on the most shorted ASX stocks in this video right here. So feel free to check out this video after this one. The next screener that I use are mostly generic screeners like Simply Wall Street, where you get to filter out by markets and some basic screening on market cap, valuation, past performance, so on and so forth. I find industry filtering not really that accurate because it really depends on how either the index or how Simply Wall Street have filtered the company into different industries. So I tend not to use this at all, mostly just advanced filters and market as well. But the one thing I do want to say about Simply Wall Street is that this is especially good if you're just starting out your investing journey because they're keeping everything simple. But for me, I think I've graduated to something a little bit more comprehensive where I like to look at, okay, what's their growth forecast? What is their historical PE ratio? What is their enterprise value to free cash flow? What is their gross margin over time? So I like to do screens a little bit more comprehensively. So I use something called Finbox to do most of my screening now. And the good thing about using Finbox also is that I get to extract a huge amount of data for a reasonable price. This is paid, so this is not free. And no, I am not sponsored as well. So at the end of the day, when it comes to screeners, I really spend the least amount of time. I spend most of my time in these two components, and only if I'm bored and I just have no idea, I go to tools and I look at if there's any companies that's worthwhile paying attention to. If not, majority of my time really is spent on these two components. I hope me sharing my system have given you some inspiration to further build out your own system. But I would love to know, what do you personally do yourself to screen for high quality ideas to go onto your watch list? Let me know in the comment section below. So just a quick portfolio update. On my CMC market side of things, it's currently worth about 94,700 Australian dollars. And as many of you asked, I am using ShareSite to track my portfolio because it just looks so much better, honestly. So the one change I did make in this portfolio is I added another 2,000 into VTS over the week. The main reason is just I have no idea when the market is going to bottom, when it's going to peak, when it's going to crash. So when the market corrected, I took the opportunity to add a little bit more into VTS because I am still sitting on quite a bit of cash. I still have around 5,000 to 6,000 that I need to allocate over the next couple of weeks. So I'll keep you posted on that as well. Other than that, I haven't made too many changes on this side of the portfolio. So with the stake side of the portfolio is currently sitting at around 35 to around 36,000 US dollars, which is give or take approximately $40,000. Now the main changes I made to my portfolio is I added more into Bristol Myers because it's a value stock that I believe will protect me, not to mention it'll provide a little bit of gains moving forward in a high interest rate environment. And Dropbox and GoPro are free stocks that's given to me when you do decide to try stake for yourself. And no, I am not sponsored. Disney did get smashed because their subscriber numbers didn't match the Wall Street investors' expectations. But it really wasn't that bad, to be honest. And I am absolutely not selling Disney whatsoever. You cannot possibly tell me that anyone on earth has a better content library than Disney. And their ability to repurpose that content into like theme parks, into other merchandise to sell, there's not that many companies on earth have that kind of capability. I added a little bit more into lit just because as it corrected, I wanted a little bit more exposure in the battery supply chain. It's not that I don't already have enough. I just wanted more exposure to the battery supply chain. That's all. Ozone I didn't touch. For the rest of the portfolio, I took a little bit of nibbling at Twilio and I started a research position in Shopify. For Twilio, it's all about the battle between third-party data and first-party data. As a growth marketer, especially any of you who are working in digital, buying Facebook ads, Facebook relied a lot on third-party data to increase their target capabilities. With the new iOS update, that really hamstrung their ability to both enhance their targeting and also report on the transactions and so on and so forth. If you're not that keen on it, you probably don't care. But if you are keen on it, just let me know in the comment section below. I'll type out a more comprehensive answer. Now, for Shopify, For those of you who have been following me, especially on my Patreon and Discord, I've been talking about Shopify for the longest time, and I have not ever had a chance to pull the trigger on it because it was just so expensively valued. I was never going to touch it at $1,500, let alone $1,200. So when it finally corrected to around $1,000, I thought, well, screw it. It's my birthday coming up soon, and I'll put in an order for $1,060 just to see if it filled. It did fill, so this is my birthday present to myself. I really wanted to own the company for the longest time, and it will incentivize me to learn more about it. Do I think these companies will ultimately correct some more in the future? Yes, I absolutely think that is the case. I really think that Shopify, Twilio, even Tesla will probably correct some more, especially in May and June. But I am not an oracle. I do not know what the bottom of the price is. So this is just me incentivizing myself to learn more about the company. So thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you want to support the channel, not to mention access to additional content pieces and be part of my fortnightly Q&A, consider supporting the channel via Patreon. Nevertheless, if you have learned something new, remember to gently smack the like button right there, subscribe to my channel so that when I release future videos, you be the first one to know. Until next time, my name is David. Otto will always do the honors and see you very, very soon.